What up, everybody? Thanks for joining me today on another episode of Let's Ask Paul, the podcast where I, Paul Abernathy, answer all your pressing electrical code related questions and other things related to the electrical industry. Thanks for joining me. If you're new to the podcast or you want to know the best locations to actually catch all of our episodes of this podcast, well, there's two ways. One, obviously, we stream on all of your popular podcast platforms like Spreaker, Spotify, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. All of those normal. Spotify is probably my number one place that I listen because it really connects nice with my Alexa devices, like the little pucks and stuff that go around the house. That's probably the best way that I listen to that type of thing. But also, one of the other way that folks, and I listen to podcasts, is through my phone, whether it's the Spotify app. But if you have our mobile app, which is free, doesn't cost you anything. If you get our mobile app, you have a lot of resources, not just calculators, but also Chat Now feature. You can get the blogs. You can get everything from your phone. And it's a really neat resource. But one of the beautiful things is that we have integrated our podcast, the Let's Ask Paul podcast, and Master the NEC podcast right on the phone itself. So it just makes it so much easier. Where can you get it? It's free. You just go to our website at fasttracksystem.com. That's FASTTRAXSYSTEM, just like it sounds, .com. If you're like me and you have attention deficit disorder and you want a shorter URL, then you can just go to NECCHAT, exactly how it sounds, .com, and you can download it right from there. Remember, we're not going to load anything on your phone. When we say download, it's basically downloading a link app, a link that goes onto your home screen so that you click it, and then we create a mobile version of our mobile app. Okay? All right. So with that said, let's kind of get into some questions. It's been a minute since I have done some, podcasts that are not been mobile version. One of the things you can always remember is the ones that are mobile, chances are that it's not going to have a lot of description about the topic. They're probably just me just talking as I'm traveling to and from the office. Whereas these that are more detailed, are probably going to have a little exclamation point in it that you click on it. It'll tell you kind of a synopsis of what this episode covers. So again, just keep that in mind. I encourage you to listen to all of them. You never know what little tidbits you may get. Some of them are salesy. I get it. Some people hate that, but you got to pay the bills. So it is what it is. Hopefully you can respect that. But yeah, we have a lot of things that are changing coming up in June. We're excited about the different things. I'm always telling you about the different changes, but we have some stuff coming up, some new video series coming out, just calculations. It's kind of going to be a complementary series that's going to be used for when you're doing, work in the field, or you're even doing exams and you want to learn the calculations part of it. But it's a whole separate thing, and it's going to be totally on our network, which is the Fast Tracks Tube. And so it's exciting because we really are spent a lot of time, money into growing that platform for the video platform and how it's delivered, and working with the developer to create software or take software and enhance it and give it the features that we want it to have. That's taken a while, and it's getting better and better. So yeah, it's a subscription model, but we're hoping to have some free content on there. Not a lot, but some. But, it's really designed to be focused on folks that really want electrical type of knowledge. And of course, we are taking on new creators, new talent right now. If you're interested and you want to have a video series and you have some knowledge of how to create videos and education and all that, we'd love to have you. It is a independent contractor program. So there's a specific, price that you can make per video. And as long as it meets our criteria, then you can even have your own channel on our network that your series will run on. And okay, so it's a good way to get exposure. Also significant if you're a really good content provider and you don't really have a big following on the social media and you're not making that much. it takes quite a while. There's some videos that can be out there for 2 or 3 years before you make $100, $200 on it because the click-through rate is so small. So being able to give somebody money up front for a video is going to really help boost that. Now, the one caveat to that is, and I will tell you educators right now, the one caveat to that is in our program is that once you develop it for us and we pay you, it can only be used on our platform. So you can't do it, get paid, and then use it on YouTube or some other social media. So you got to keep that in mind. So this is exclusive content that you will be making for us in the subdivision of Electrical Code Academy is the Fast Tracks tube. And that is branching off to be its own thing. And so in that scenario, it becomes the property of Fast Tracks tube. So keep that in mind if you are interested in being a creator or you feel like you have a talent for that. We'd love to have you. We'd love to help spread some knowledge. Again, once anything that you produce has to meet our criteria level. We're just not going to let you make fluffy stuff to cash in. It's got to be content that's worthy. But we're more than happy to pay for that. And we have plenty of funds to be able to support that program. So I think we've dedicated the startup of that is like $250,000 just put in an account dedicated for creator. So there's plenty of money in there to help create content. Okay, so that's been put aside specifically for that program's development and the talent development program. Okay. All right. So let's get into some questions. I'm sure that's what you tuned in for is some questions. 7 minutes in, you've either listened this far or clicked off, and I get it. Attention spans being what they are. But let's go on and see if we can get into some questions. Okay, the first question we have that was submitted says, "Hey, Paul, I always thank you for what you do and thank you for continuing to answer my questions. I'm grateful to have a resource like you in the industry. That being said, I have another one. This one's controversial." Okay. It says 2023 NEC kitchen island / peninsula receptacles. Can they be installed under countertops or not? I say no, but I've had people say that if a receptacle is optional and not technically required, it doesn't have to follow the rules under required receptacles. To me, this is just a result in poorly written code, and I'm sure it will be clarified in the 2026 because we all know what the intention was. Looking forward to your take. Thank you. Okay, so I have done podcasts and videos on this before. It's one of those things where it took a lot of people that supposedly talked about children getting hurt by people pulling cords off counters and all this kind of stuff. I never bought into all of that, and it's not because I'm a hater. That's not the reason. That's not the reason. I just remember that prior to the 2023, and I'll explain it, but prior to that, there was so much talk about people getting injured or hurt because people were putting things like crock pots and other things on these islands during holidays, and they had no receptacles there, or they didn't have enough receptacles that people were stringing extension cords over, and then people were running into those and pulling them off. And so, and I also remember that the IAEI and many other inspection authorities were crying that there wasn't enough receptacle outlets at islands or peninsulas. And that's why we went from the original, which was a kind of scenario where you're looking at a 12 by 24, and they went to, well, let's go to a square foot method. First 9 square feet gets one, and every 18 square feet after that gets another, because they felt we didn't have enough. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's not like we had a massive run on people dying from this or kids getting hurt. I mean, again, there is a certain level of accountability and responsibility. We can't necessarily save everybody from themselves. But it seems like when it came to this time in the 2023 during that development stage, it seems like everybody jumped on the bandwagon that, we don't need them. And if you are going to have them, then the receptacle has to be above or they can be in the surface or pop above it, as long as they're not more than 20 inches, then you can have the receptacle outlet. Or if you do want them at the island or peninsula, then they have to be on or above, and it can't be higher than 20 inches, right? Okay, so basically that eliminated the ability to have it below the countertop. And if you remember in previous code cycles, it could be below the countertop. If it was flat across the surface, you had no backsplash, it's just an island or peninsula with no countertop, with no backsplash, for example, then you're able to put the receptacle below it as long as it's not under an overhang more than 6 inches from the base, or any part of the receptacle is not down below more than 12 inches. Okay, so that's where we were. And so 2023 comes around and it removes all that, and it puts a provision that says, okay, you're not required to have the receptacle outlets at an island or peninsula, but you have to make sure that there's provisions there for the future in case somebody wants to put one. And oh, by the way, if they want to put one, then they can, but then they have to follow all of the rules that say, again, that it has to be on or above and not more than 20 inches above. So you didn't have any provision to put them below, okay? Now, I think one of the things that confuses folks is that you could always have a receptacle that was lower than 12 inches below the countertop. It just couldn't serve the countertop. So there are many situations where you might have an island that was built, instead of it being cabinets that you butt together, and that's not really a wall, that's just cabinets. And so they wouldn't really qualify as wall space because it's just cabinets. But there are many occasions where those islands are built with a wall and then the cabinets butt against it. Well, if that's the case, then what you have is a wall. And if it's 2 feet or more, then it's required to have receptacles, just like any other wall space that would be in your kitchen or any other room, right? I think the problem with that is that, yes, you could have a receptacle down lower. It just wasn't there to serve the countertop. So any of them that are to serve the countertop has to follow these rules. So the question is, can I have receptacles below the countertop, like, in the cabinet? Well, we do that all the time, right? I mean, there's receptacles in there for a cord and plug for garbage disposer, or in-sink waste disposer, as everybody likes to say, or a dishwasher. So there's allowances. Obviously, we have receptacles underneath the counter. And so the question is, can I put a receptacle in the cabinet or can I put it in the counter, below the counter, but it's not serving the counter? Then the answer is yes. We've been doing that forever. So the question really has to be, am I putting the receptacle in to use to serve the counter? Or am I putting the receptacle in there because it's now considered wall space and I'm trying to serve, 21052 A, the wall space requirement? If that's what it's in there to serve, the requirement for the wall space, then it's not there to serve the countertop or work surface. So it's perfectly okay. It's perfectly fine. You understand? Can I have receptacles that are inside of the cabinet? Obviously, we've been doing that forever, so that's fine. They're for that need, okay? So I think that the question is, I think what they're asking is, no, I want to put a receptacle on the side of my cabinet that is down 12 inches like it was before, and since there's no overhang rule, this is, and say that it's not to serve the countertop. Well, that's where we get into a little bit of an iffy line because, an AHJ is going to see it close to the countertop, and they're going to say, you know what, you're putting that in to serve the countertop. You're not putting it in to serve a wall space requirement. So there's going to have to be, and that's the thing. Everybody wants the NEC to be so black and white. And it really can't be, and it's up to the AHJ that's going to have to make those decisions, and that's why you need inspectors that are very open-minded and understand what we're dealing with. Because if I'm an inspector and I see a receptacle 6 inches down from the top of the countertop, and I'm in the 2023 NEC, then I'm going to think that receptacle is to serve that countertop. And if that's the case, that would be a violation, right? But if I see one on the cabinet that is down low, and I notice that this happens to qualify as wall space, if it's like a framed up wall that the cabinets are pushed against that creates the island or whatnot, then I'm going to look at it and go, okay, then that is a wall space requirement, and I'm going to allow that receptacle to be there. So I think that's kind of the line they have to cross. Just because I think the key here is that receptacle outlet installed to serve the countertop, or could it be construed that it's there to serve because you're putting it up closer to the countertop? If that's the case, then I think you have a problem, at least the way the 2023 code is written. Okay. Now we're going to get some relief from that in the 2026. It's not a total relief. It has a lot to do with drawers and how you would place the receptacle outlet in the drawer and all this other stuff that's going to come out, and it's still being voted on. So I don't want to go into that yet. We'll obviously talk about that in future episodes or what they're intending to do at that code panel too. I'm not altogether sold, but it does give a little relief. So hang tight. But for many of you, that's a long way down the road. So in 2023, that's my opinion on it. Hopefully that is helpful to you. But again, it's if you want to get around that, just put the receptacle down low if it's to meet a wall space requirement. And if it's not to serve a countertop and you put it down lower, like it's normal 18 inches, 20-inch height, then I think your argument could be that it is not there to serve the countertop. It is there because you have an option that you can put receptacles pretty much anywhere you want, that type of thing, right? And that's what you choose. It is obviously not going to serve the countertop. Now, you're going to have some guys that go, dude, if you put it on the island at all, then I'm thinking it's there because you want it to serve the countertop or island. Well, you know what? I can't tell you what the inspector is going to think. And the code is not written that way. And everybody would love it to be, but they're the same people that gripe that the code requires too much or is too deep and makes things difficult. So, you know, you can't win for losing in some cases. The code, they're making it this way, and the AHJ is going to have to make the ultimate decision. But I can tell you, if you put it up close to the counter, I'm going to say it's there to serve the counter. And under 2023, it can't be. It's got to be on or above and not higher than 20 inches. And I'm going to say anything that's remotely close to the countertop or the work surface is being installed to serve that work surface, and that would be a violation. Does that mean, again, that I can't put receptacles inside the cabinet for whatever reason, for a specific appliance or whatnot? Absolutely. I don't see anything that would say you can't do that because, again, I can put, you know the spacing rules in a house, 6 foot, 12 foot rule, typically under the 21052A. Well, and more specifically A1, I think that you could put them every 2 feet if you wanted. Okay, so I think this is the same scenario here, but it's all the intent of where you're putting that outlet, that receptacle outlet. That's the intent here that you've got to be aware of. Okay, all right. Hopefully, I answered that question for you. I went a little deeper than I probably should have gone with that one, but hey, it's one of those things where you want to make sure you're answering folks' questions and being as deep as you can. And you know, I tell people they don't like my long-winded podcast, and they have every right to not listen. That's your prerogative. All right, so let's see here. Let's go to another question that was submitted. This question was submitted again, by the way, folks, all of these questions are submitted through paulabernathy.com. Again, it's a free service. Okay, I don't have to beg you to do it. I got plenty of questions that I can do, but you know, that is one way that we kind of give back to the industry. In answering people's questions. You don't have to agree with my opinion. Again, I'm going to give you code references where necessary. Okay. And, you know, so where it's necessary to give them to support it, where otherwise you're just asking my thought on something, we'll do our best to do that. Okay. The next question comes and says, hey, Paul, I'm getting confused with Article 225.30 concerning branch circuits to a detached garage. Let's say that a detached garage has a single 120 volt branch circuit supplying it to serve the general lights and receptacles. But now they need an EV charger. Okay. says, can a separate EV charger branch circuit be run 240 volts, let's say 60 amps, and have a means of disconnect at the detached structure along with the 120 volt branch circuit having its own means of disconnect? Or would the 120 volt branch circuit have to be abandoned and a new feeder pulled to be large enough to handle the original 120 volt loads and the new 240 volt EV charger loads? The longer-winded the explanation, the better. I'm looking to understand this as much as possible and not finding reliable enough information. Well, there's a problem with social media right there. I'm still on the 2017 code, but newer updated explanations are welcome since the majority of states are on the 2020. Thank you for the content as always. Okay, thanks for the question. We're going to use the 2023. So again, you want the latest code, you say 2020, but I kind of go to the latest code, and it is not any significant changes in this that I see that would warrant it doing any earlier codes, so that we can be a little more general to all the people that may be listening as your code cycles start to change and you start going to 2023. The 2020 is going to be similar. There is I don't see any real change in this, so it's not going to affect my answer. Okay, so the first thing you're thinking about here, detached structure, it's very much like a service. In a sense, you can how many services can you have to a building? Well, other than some other allowances, you have one service to a building. I mean, that's it. Now, there's other allowances to be able to do that, and you just have to get familiar with them in 230.2, right? Number of services. But this is different because this 225.30, is under part 2 of 225, and it's talking about buildings or other structures supplied by feeders or branch circuits. So admittedly, what you have is a branch circuit running to that detached structure, and you're picking up the lights and you're picking up the receptacle. That's perfectly acceptable. That is one of the allowances there. You don't have to have a feeder going to a remote distribution panel there. Okay, that's perfectly allowed to do what you've done or what they've done. So the question here is, they really want to bring another branch circuit to this detached structure. Okay, so here's what it says in 225.30, and it's titled Number of Supplies, because obviously it's like 230.2, but we're not talking about number of services. This is supplies. It says a building or other structure that is served by a branch circuit or a feeder on the load side of a service disconnecting means, and obviously this would be a remote distribution, okay, from the main panel to this detached structure, shall be supplied by only one feeder or branch circuit unless permitted in 225.30A through F. And it says, for the purpose of this section, a multi-wire branch circuit shall be considered a single circuit, okay, for this application. All right, so that means that if I ran a 12-3 there, even though I technically can get two circuits out of that, a black and a red sharing a neutral, and it qualifies as two separate circuits, as far as it's concerned, it doesn't breach anything. That is still just one branch circuit, so I'm not violating the rules in 225.30, where it says only one branch circuit. So it's just telling you, yeah, I know that a multi-wire branch is really two circuits sharing a neutral, but to meet this rule, it's just a single circuit. That's fine. It says where a branch circuit or feeder originates in these additional buildings or other structure, only one feeder or branch circuit shall be permitted to supply power back to the original building or structure unless permitted in 225.30A through F. So what that means, by the way, in case you didn't understand that language that came in last cycle in the 2020, is that, look, that means if I'm going from your house to a detached structure, and then I want to, and say that's the branch circuit, let's just say, or it could be a feeder, but now in that detached structure, I want to supply power, let's say, back to the original building, that it is going to allow me to do only one feeder branch circuit is going to be permitted to come back. Now, this is probably not that practical for residential, but it is when you deal with like campus systems or where you have these large universities, and they may have feeders that are going out, and they might have something like something powering back to the original building. And so this allows you to do that. Okay, so it allows you. Now, with that said, again, reminder that a lot of this stuff in part 2 is dealing with, this is just supplies. This is not services, although it's going to seem very similar to services. So for those that are used to that. So the reason I say that is because when you see the number of supplies and you come down to A, which is special conditions, then you'll see things like fire pumps, emergency systems, legally required standby, optional, parallel power production systems, and so forth. Now, the one that comes to mind that they want to use as a special condition is it says electric vehicle power transfer systems. That's typically when you have more than a single branch of feeders. So not when you're just taking a detached structure like your question and just wanting to put one EV in there. So you would not use A7 for that allowance, okay? And then the other ones are really not germane to any of these until you get down to E. Now, E is different characteristics. All right, so if I have 120 that is brought to this detached structure, but now I want to bring a branch circuit that's going to supply 240, then it very well could be argued here because it says additional feeders or branch circuits shall be permitted for different voltages, frequency, or phases, or for different uses such as control of outside lighting from multiple locations. So you could conceivably argue here that you have 120 volt system there and you're bringing a 240 volt system there. They are definitely different voltages. So that's one of those things. And again, you could argue is for a different use. Now it says such as to control outside lighting from multiple locations. That's just a such as use. That's not an all-encompassing use. So it's one of those things where you can have a conversation with your AHJ, your local building official, and say, okay, I've got 120 and I'll need to bring 240. And that is most certainly different voltages. Okay. So it didn't say in here one thing. It says you shall be permitted to have, for example, something to do with phasing or the phases. In a sense, it says or phases, but we're not talking about single phase versus 3-phase, which would be an easier one. Since it's all single phase, you got to kind of hang your hat on the different voltages. Here's a caveat to that. You need to verify with your local AHJ, and it's going to be better for you to be able to paint the picture for them to kind of express what you're trying to do. Again, and lastly, there is one under F that's called documented switching procedures. This is mainly seen in campuses and multi-building industrial complexes. But again, you can make the argument that your detached structure is under single management, and there is a rule in here for documented safe switching procedures. But again, it's got to be established and maintained. I don't know how you would swing that. Obviously, commercial industrial has a maintenance policy, maintenance program, established program. So I don't know how you would do that with a single family dwelling in your case, but I would probably try to use E for that. And so there'll be others that say, well, that's not different voltages. Well, last time I checked, 120 volt is different than a 240 volt. So that could be your argument. And give it, I mean, I'm sure there's the pinheads that'll disagree, and that's fine. But I'm just giving you my opinion on that. So now, is it an option to do what you said originally and just change it to a feeder and put a panel in? So here's the thing. That would probably what I would advocate for. Obviously, as a contractor, it's not that I'm going to make more money having to put in a feeder, but if I'm going to have to bring another branch circuit to this structure, and it's got to come from the main panel, then it seems to me like it would just be a better expansion they might end up doing more things in this garage. It seems to me like it would be an opportunity, since you've got to dig the trench anyway. It's going to have to be the same depth regardless of whether it's a branch circuit or you're taking a feeder out there. It seems to me it would be your best interest to just simply convert that. And it's real easy to run a feeder, put a panel, and now, go over and feed that same box that originally was getting fed from the dwelling with that original branch circuit, and just refeed it from the panel that's being installed in the detached structure. To me, you're going to have to bring another one anyway, so this seems to be the best approach, and I don't see where it would cost that much more. Maybe a 100 amp remote distribution panel versus 60 for the branch circuit for the EV. So it seems like me that would be the best thing. So just giving advice, I would kind of say, look, you're going to get more expansion, more capacity, more use, potentially to add something else in here. So this is how I would go. And it can't cost that much more. It really can't that much more. I'm just saying. All right. So hopefully that answers that question. Gave you my opinion on that. You can agree to disagree if you want. That's fine. I don't have a problem with disagreements. So, but that's my thoughts on it there. Let's see. What else do we got? Okay. All right. So we got another question in here. And Darlene's actually starred this one for me. So I guess this must be somewhat of a question, but also a self-promotion, because that's usually what she does when she stars these questions for me. Okay. It says, hi, my name is Beep, and I just recently purchased one of your programs to help me pass my master's exam for the state of Texas. Good. All right. In your opinion, which type of calculation questions should I focus on? Lastly, are there any specific videos that you would recommend from Fast Track's Tube that would help me understand how to do those types of calculations? Thank you for your time and help. Okay. Yeah. So in Texas, if you're taking your master's exam, there's two separate tests. So you have your lookup skills, which you're going to learn as you go through our Fast Tracks program. You're going to get better at looking up things, using the chevrons, going in and out of the code book. You're going to get better at that. Obviously, we go over single-family dwelling, multifamily dwelling, non-commercial type, a non-dwelling type of calculations, like stores and restaurants, and multifamily, like a 6-unit complex and a 12-unit complex. One of the things that I will tell you that as you go through it, and these are in Unit 8, 11, and 13, by the way, in our programs, whether it's the basic or the enhanced or the black or the plus, it doesn't matter, same kind of content. Really focus on all of the steps that are involved in your multifamily, in your single family. And those things I would say focus on understanding range calculations. I would understand how to do appliance calculations. All of those type of things. When it comes to calculations, really try to focus on the low-hanging fruit stuff, right? Because a lot of times on exams, they realize that there's a certain amount of time, and so they're usually not going to get too deep. But one of the advices I can give you is you make sure that you really hone down the 3-wave method, that you truly understand how that method works. Okay, we have a video on that. It's over on the Fast Tracks Tube, just in the search feature at the top, just type 3-wave, that type of thing. Or you can type calculations and you'll get all of our content that's focused on calculations. If you're on Fast Tracks Tube, there is one 8-hour calculations video that is 8 hours. It's worth Fast Tracks Tube by itself. Watch that 8-hour video, okay? And we're going to go over so many calculations in there. Also in there, again, if you do a search at the top and you type in calculations and you use the search feature, you're going to get a lot of our calculation videos, and just watch them. Just watch them. A couple of things that you have to get used to on Texas exams, it could be the same with any exams, is that they're going to ask you potentially any piece of a load calculation. And they may not ask you to do the entire load calc or something like that, but they might ask you to do pieces of it, right? And so you might need to understand the appliances and how to apply appliances in 220.53. They might ask you a dryer question in 220.54. They might ask you a range question dealing with 220.55. So I can't really tell you any specific calcs. And as I say, most people know that I served with PSI in order to help write some of the exam questions in Texas. But I've not done that for 2 cycles now. So it's not that they're going to scrap all the questions that we helped create. That would be too much work. And I can promise you, from somebody that sits there and helps develop test questions, we don't reinvent the wheel. All we do is look at questions to see if they're still relevant, if it wasn't code change specific, if it wasn't like a 2020 and now that's changed for the 2023. We spend a little time doing that, but we didn't really spend a lot of time trying to rewrite or reinvent the wheel. Now, we were asked to write new questions and submit them each day to try to help build up the question pool. And then we did a lot of time looking at questions that were underperforming, or some that were too hard, or some that were too easy, and could we rewrite them to balance it out a little bit? But yeah, we didn't sit down every time 3 days that we're there and just try to write a bunch of questions. There's already thousands of them in the data pool. So all we did was look at ones that were performing good or bad, really, and did adding a few here and there. So I can tell you with all confidence that the questions are not difficult, but there's a lot, and they press on you as the master test. It's a totally separate exam. Okay, whereas a journeyman, the calculations are mixed in. The master, it's not. And many states are going that way. All I can tell you is just focus on the question. And if you're in our program, Unit 8, 11, and 13, if you don't get above 85, or you get in the mid 80s, if you get below that, don't be satisfied. Go over it again, look at it again, spend some extra time in there, and even create your own question based on the competency reviews that we give you. Just change the numbers around. Like instead of 2 small appliance brand circuits, make it 3, or make it 4, or 2 laundry circuits, or change the square footage. And you can get very creative, and you should be testing yourself, that type of thing. But that's the kind of questions they're going to ask you, very basic. They might ask you a simple question for calculation to understand, do you understand continuous loads? All right? So all those type of things. So again, I can't tell you any specific calculations you should be looking for, except I can promise you that you're probably going to get a question about an all-electric restaurant. Okay, so you need to understand how to do that calculation. And it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, but you got to make sure you understand how to do it. A lot of times they have a question where it wants to know how to size something if it's a 4-wire 3-phase system, and it's for example, a 4-wire 3-phase Y system, and for these individual dwelling units, it's branching off of that with 3-wire systems. Okay, so 2 hots, a neutral, and an equipment ground. And when you hear people say 3-wire, they're not including the equipment ground. So when you see 3-wire, it's really 2 hots, a neutral, and an equipment ground. Okay, so don't get fooled by that. Okay, when you see somebody say a 4-wire 3-phase, then that is 3 phases, a neutral for the most part, and then you're still going to have an equipment ground. So don't get confused in that when you hear stuff like that. So a 3-wire system that's derived from a 4-wire 3-phase system. Okay, when it derives from it, it's just deriving 2 phases. And that's the case, you need to know how to do the system, how to convert that type of thing to determine, let's say, if you have a certain number of ranges. Now, here's a tip for you. We have a video that explains that. It's available over on Fast Tracks Tube. Just type in ranges, it'll come up. But remember, there's an informative index, D, that already has an example of that as well, to help refresh your memory on how to do that math, okay? In order to be able to determine the number of actual ranges you have, and then you can go and apply all of the rules in 220.55. So just know that that's probably coming, and we do have videos for both of those, okay? But other than that, just study. Spend a lot of time in 8, 11, and 13. Focus. Don't be in such a hurry to finish. Don't be in such a hurry to submit it for us to grade it. And if you're in the basic and the enhanced program, you're still got the same complicated questions on the competency. Just before you go looking at the answers, take your time and really work it out. Work it a couple times and see if you keep getting the same answer. And then when you do look at the answer key, and if you get it wrong, then spend extra time trying to figure out why you got it wrong. And then remember that you can always reach out to me and I will explain it in more detail. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about our program, whether it's the basic or enhanced where you don't have my personal grading, I'm still here. I'm still available for you to ask me questions on paulabernathy.com. You can go to our message board that's on the website. There's many ways that you can get questions answered. And it's your fault if you don't try to get those questions answered. I want you to come away feeling confident. That's key, confident. And that's the kind of passion I put into it. And I want you to be able to feel the same way, okay? All right, for those that listened, that's it for today's episode. We obviously have more coming out, so if you, again, make sure you subscribe. And do me a favor, if you're not following us on our YouTube channel, that is where we send a lot of notices. Do me a favor, go to youtube.com/Master the NEC. It's all one word, MasterThenec. Just do me a favor, subscribe over there, and that way you know you're going to get notifications. And if you really want some great videos and you're not a subscriber and you want to share some love, do me a favor, just go to fasttrackstube.com. That's FASTTRAXTUBE.com and subscribe. If you use our coupon code right now, while it's still active, it's 50 OFF, so 50 off. That is 50% off an annual subscription. We hope that you realize that 8-hour alone calculation video is worth it. The 12 hours of grounding and bonding video that we have up there is worth it. The swimming pool and spa 8-part series is worth it alone. That easily worth the $49.50 you're going to pay if you use the coupon. Now, once this new series comes out called Just Calculations, the price will be going up to, I believe, $125 for an annual subscription. So I would, that's about $26 increase in the standard annual fee. Get in on it now. And you don't have to worry about that because that new series will be coming out here in a little over a month. So, all right, folks, that's all I've got. Hopefully you enjoyed something or learned something from this. Until next time, stay safe. God bless. And we will catch you on the next episode of Let's Ask Paul.